Section 4 of the Letters of Jane Austen. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Elizabeth Klett. Letter 8. Steventon, December 1st. My dear Cassandra, I am so good as to write to you again thus speedily, to let you know that I have just heard from Frank. He was at Cadiz, alive and well, on October 18th, and had then very lately received a letter from you, written as long ago as when the London was at St. Helen's. But his rarely latest intelligence of us was in one of me of September 1st, which I sent soon after we had got to Godmersham. He had written a packet full for his dearest friends in England, early in October, to go by the Excellent. But the Excellent was not sailed, nor likely to sail, when he dispatched this to me. It comprehended letters for both of us, for Lord Spencer, Mr. Daysh, and the East India Directors. Lord St. Vincent had left the fleet when he wrote, and was gone to Gibraltar. It was said to superintend the fitting out of a private expedition from thence against some of the enemy's ports. Minorca or Malta were conjectured to be the objects. Frank writes in good spirits, but says that our correspondence cannot be so easily carried on in future as it has been, as the communication between Cadiz and Lisbon is less frequent than formerly. You and my mother, therefore, must not alarm yourselves at the long intervals that may divide his letters. I address this advice to you, too, as being the most tender-hearted of the family. My mother made her entree into the dressing-room through crowds of admiring spectators yesterday afternoon, and we all drank tea together for the first time these 5 weeks. She has had a tolerable night, and bids fair for a continuance in the same brilliant course of action to-day. Mr. Lyford was here yesterday. He came while we were at dinner, and partook of our elegant entertainment. I was not ashamed of asking him to sit down to table, for we had some pease soup, a spare rib, and a pudding. He wants my mother to look yellow and to throw out a rash, but she will do neither. I was at Deane yesterday morning. Mary was very well, but does not gain bodily strength very fast. When I saw her so stout on the 3rd and 6th days, I expected to have seen her as well as ever by the end of a fortnight. James went to Ibthorp yesterday to see his mother and child. Letty is with Mary at present, of course exceedingly happy, and in raptures with the child. Mary does not manage matters in such a way as to make me want to lay in myself. She is not tidy enough in her appearance. She has no dressing-gown to sit up in. Her curtains are all too thin, and things are not in that comfort and style about her which are necessary to make such a situation an enviable one. Elizabeth was really a pretty object with her nice clean cap put on so tidily, and her dress so uniformly white and orderly. We live entirely in the dressing-room now, which I like very much. I always feel so much more elegant in it than in the parlour. No news from Kintbury yet. Eliza sports with our impatience. She was very well last Thursday. Who is Miss Maria Montresor going to marry, and what is to become of Miss Mulcaster? I find great comfort in my stuff gown, but I hope you do not wear yours too often. I have made myself 2 or 3 caps to wear of evenings since I came home, and they save me a world of torment as to hair-dressing, which at present gives me no trouble beyond washing and brushing, for my long hair is as always plaited up out of sight, and my short hair curls well enough to want no papering. I have had it cut lately by Mr. Butler. There is no reason to suppose that Miss Morgan is dead after all. Mr. Lyford gratified us very much yesterday by his praises of my father's mutton, which they all think the finest that ever was ate. John Bond begins to find himself grow old, which John Bonds ought not to do, and unequal to much hard work. A man is therefore hired to supply his place as to labour, and John himself is to have the care of the sheep. There are not more people engaged than before, I believe, only men instead of boys. I fancy so at least, but you know my stupidity as to such matters. Lizzie Bond is just apprenticed to Miss Small, so we may hope to see her able to spoil gowns in a few years. My father has applied to Mr. May for an alehouse for Robert, at his request, and to Mr. Dean of Winchester likewise. This was my mother's idea, who thought he would be proud to oblige a relation of Edward in return for Edward's accepting his money. He sent a very civil answer indeed, but has no vacant house at present. May expects to have an empty one soon at Farnham, so perhaps Nanny may have the honour of drawing ale for the Bishop. I shall write to Frank to-morrow. Charles Powlett gave a dance on Thursday, to the great disturbance of all his neighbours. Of course, who you know, take a most lively interest in the state of his finances, and live in hopes of his being soon ruined. We are very much disposed to like our new maid. She knows nothing of a dairy, to be sure, which in our family is rather against her, but she is to be taught it all. In short, we have felt the inconvenience of being without a maid so long, that we are determined to like her, and she will find it a hard matter to displease us. As yet she seems to cook very well, is uncommonly stout, and says she can work well at her needle. Sunday. My father is glad to hear so good an account of Edward's pigs, and desires he may be told, as encouragement to his taste for them, that Lord Bolton is particularly curious in his pigs, has had pigsties of a most elegant construction built for them, and visits them every morning as soon as he rises. Affectionately yours, J. A. Letter 9. Steventon, Tuesday, December 18th. My dear Cassandra, your letter came quite as soon as I expected, and so your letters will always do, because I have made it a rule not to expect them till they come, in which I think I consult the ease of us both. It is a great satisfaction to us to hear that your business is in a way to be settled, and so settled as to give you as little inconvenience as possible. You are very welcome to my father's name, and to his services, if they are ever required in it. I shall keep my £10, too, to wrap myself up in next winter. I took the liberty a few days ago of asking your black velvet bonnet to lend me its caul, which it very readily did, and by which I have been enabled to give a considerable improvement of dignity to cap, which was before too niggardly to please me. I shall wear it on Thursday, but I hope you will not be offended with me for following your advice as to its ornaments only in part. I still venture to retain the narrow silver round it, put twice round without any bow, and instead of the black military feather, shall put in the coquelicot one as being smarter. And besides, coquelicot is to be all the fashion this winter. After the ball I shall probably make it entirely black. I am sorry that our dear Charles begins to feel the dignity of ill usage. My father will write to Admiral Gambier. He must have already received so much satisfaction from his acquaintance and patronage of Frank that he will be delighted, I dare say, to have another of the family introduced to him. I think it would be very right in Charles to address Sir Thomas on the occasion, though I cannot approve of your scheme of writing to him, which you communicated to me a few nights ago, to request him to come home and convey you to Steventon. To do you justice, however, you had some doubts of the propriety of such a measure yourself. I am very much obliged to my dear little George for his message, for his love at least. His duty, I suppose, is only in consequence of some hint of my favourable intentions toward him from his father or mother. I am sincerely rejoiced, however, that I ever was born, since it has been the means of procuring him a dish of tea. Give my best love to him. Wednesday. I have changed my mind, and changed the trimmings of my cap this morning. They are now such as you suggested. I felt as if I should not prosper if I strayed from your directions, and I think it makes me look more like Lady Coyningham now than it ever did before, which is all that one lives for now. I believe I shall make my new gown like my robe, but the back of the latter is all in a piece with the tail, and will 7 yards enable me to copy it in that respect? I have just heard from Martha and Frank. His letter was written on November 12. All well, and nothing particular. J. A. Letter 10. Steventon, Monday night, December 24. My dear Cassandra, I have got some pleasant news for you, which I am eager to communicate, and therefore begin my letter sooner, though I shall not send it sooner than usual. Admiral Gambier, in reply to my father's application, writes as follows. As it is usual to keep young officers in small vessels, it being most proper on account of their inexperience, and it being also a situation where they are more in the way of learning their duty, your son has been continued in the Scorpion. But I have mentioned to the Board of Admiralty his wish to be in a frigate, and when a proper opportunity offers, and it is judged that he has taken his turn in a small ship, I hope he will be removed. With regard to your son now in the London, I am glad I can give you the assurance that his promotion is likely to take place very soon, as Lord Spencer has been so good as to say he would include him in an arrangement that he proposes making in short time relative to some promotions in that quarter. There, I may now finish my letter, and go and hang myself, for I am sure I can neither write nor do anything which will not appear insipid to you after this. Now I really think he will soon be made, and only wish we could communicate our foreknowledge of the event to him whom it principally concerns. My father has written to-day to desire that he will inform us, if he can, when the commission is sent. Your chief wish is now ready to be accomplished, and could Lord Spencer give happiness to Martha at the same time, what a joyful heart he would make of yours. I have sent the same extract of the sweets of Gambier to Charles, who, poor fellow, though he sinks into nothing but a humble attendant on the hero of the piece, will, I hope, be contented with the prospect held out to him. By what the Admiral says, it appears as if he had been designedly kept in the Scorpion. But I will not torment myself with conjectures and suppositions. Facts shall satisfy me. Frank had not heard from any of us for 10 weeks when he wrote to me on November 12, in consequence of Lord St. Vincent being removed to Gibraltar. When his commission is sent, however, it will not be so long on its road as our letters, because all the Government dispatches are forwarded by land to his Lordship from Lisbon with great regularity. I returned from Manydown this morning, and found my mother certainly in no respect worse than when I left her. She does not like the cold weather, but that we cannot help. I spent my time very quietly and very pleasantly with Catherine. Miss Blackford is agreeable enough. I do not want people to be very agreeable, as it saves me the trouble of liking them a great deal. I found only Catherine and her when I got to Manydown on Thursday. We dined together, and went together to Worting to seek the protection of Mrs. Clarke, with whom were Lady Mildmay, her eldest son, and Mr. and Mrs. Hall. Our ball was very thin, but by no means unpleasant. There were 31 people, and only 11 ladies out of the number, and but 5 single women in the room. Of the gentlemen present you may have some idea from the list of my partners: Mr. Wood, G. Lefroy, Rice, a Mr. Butcher, belonging to the Temples, a sailor and not of the 11th Light Dragoons, Mr. Temple, not the horrid one of all, and Mr. William Ord, cousin to the King's Clare man, Mr. John Harwood, and Mr. Calland, who appeared as usual with his hat in his hand, and stood every now and then behind Catherine and me to be talked to and abused for not dancing. We teased him, however, into it at last. I was very glad to see him again after so long a separation, and he was altogether rather the genius and flirt of the evening. He inquired after you. There were 20 dances, and I danced them all, and without any fatigue. I was glad to find myself capable of dancing so much, and with so much satisfaction as I did. From my slender enjoyment of the Ashford balls, as assemblies for dancing, I had not thought myself equal to it. But in cold weather and with few couples, I fancy I could just as well dance for a week together as for half an hour. My black cap was openly admired by Mrs. Lefroy, and secretly, I imagine, by everybody else in the room. Poor Edward! It is very hard that he, who has had everything else in the world that he can wish for, should not have good health too. But I hope, with the assistance of stomach complaints, faintnesses, and sicknesses, he will soon be restored to that blessing likewise. If his nervous complaint proceeded from a suppression of something that ought to be thrown out, which does not seem unlikely, the first of these disorders may really be a remedy, and I sincerely wish it may, for I know no one more deserving of happiness without alloy than Edward is. The Lords of the Admiralty will have enough of our applications at present, for I hear from Charles that he has written to Lord Spencer himself to be removed. I am afraid his Serene Highness will be in a passion, and order some of our heads to be cut off. You deserve a longer letter than this, but it is my unhappy fate seldom to treat people so well as they deserve. God bless you. Yours affectionately, Jane Austen. Wednesday. The snow came to nothing yesterday, so I did go to Deane, and returned home at 9 o'clock at night in that little carriage, and without being very cold. End of section 4.